Alright. So, first the pain, chat. First the pain. It's Rev time, talking about Bioware leaks that showcase the failure of Veilguard. So, I am curious what leaks we're talking about and how Veilguard could have gotten. So let's fucking go.
Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So today we're going to be covering multiple stories from the gaming industry, but we're going to begin with some updates regarding Dragon Age the Veilguard. Now, as you can see, this game is struggling mightily. Only about a month after its release, the number of concurrent players has dwindled all the way down to 5,700 players. Obviously,
and I'm going to do an in fairness here. This is PC only. This does not equate for console. And I'm pretty sure this is Dragon Age is PlayStation only, or is it on Xbox too? Is this game available on Xbox? I can't remember if it is or not. I'm pretty sure it's available on PlayStation, but I don't know if it's PlayStation exclusive. No, Jordan, I'm talking about in addition to PC. Because this number here, the 5796, that's PC numbers. That's basically through Steam. So these are Steam numbers. The question is which console is on it too, to determine if, like, okay, we've got 5,700 PC players, but we don't know how many console players it has. That's why I'm doing it in fairness of this. However, don't forget, 1 week after it launched, Rev will probably mention this, 1 week after it launched, the devs said, we're done. No DLC, no support, you're on your own, we're fucking off to go work on Mass Effect. Don't forget that. Rev will probably mention it, but don't forget about it.
Things are not going well, and a lot of people are trying to guess as to what the sales numbers of this game are so they can determine how much of a flop this game is. Not if it's a flop, but how much of a flop this game is. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to get any official information regarding this. The Veilguard director
this is a shock.
Outright said they're not going to share any sales numbers for this game, but when you can't get an official source, it helps when you have an insider and a whistleblower sharing that relevant information.
Oh,
and
nice.
That's exactly what we got thanks to this exclusive from Smash JT here, where he has a trusted Bioware employee who is leaking some information about the company, including some information about those sales numbers, as well as a blooming culture shift that might be taking place at Bioware.
And by the way, chat, do you remember how I was talking about how when we were talking about having cultural things, such as, okay, when we were talking about Hogwarts Legacy yesterday, how having pronouns or transgendered individuals within the game, and it was fine, nobody cared because it was done organically, and it worked, and it made fucking sense. This scene right here, the push-up scene, where this character, I don't know her fucking name because I don't play Dragon Age, sorry, but she refers to Tosh as she instead of they, realizes it's Isabella. Okay, so Isabella refers to Tosh as she instead of they. Isabella realizes it, gets up, and starts doing push-ups as penance for misgendering Tosh. That's not putting that kind of social inclusion into a game organically, particularly when it doesn't make any fucking sense in the first place. Yes, Mike, that is a thing in this game. Tosh is non-binary. Isabella refers to Tosh as a she, realizes it, and then starts doing push-ups as penance for misgendering Tosh. That is real. You can see clips of it. It's fucking stupid. And it's offensive to people who are actually part of the LGBT community. Which I've said over and fucking over again. All of this shit is offending the very people they claim to be championing. And diabetes, about the same time the character creator removed the option for you to actually have an ass. That's when she lost 3 cup sizes. So when the rainbow-haired idiots took over development.
And perhaps across the gaming industry. So let's begin with those sales numbers.
The insider revealed that Bioware's latest title, The Veilguard, had significantly underperformed. Despite internally, they're quite ambitious.
Oh god, I'm sorry! Chat! Look at... Hang up, I have to move you! I only caught this out of the corner of my eye! Watch Rev! Watch Rev! Ignore what Smash GT's saying. Watch Rev.
Significantly underperformed. Despite internally their quite ambitious sales target of 10 million copies to be sold within the first 3 months, the game has managed to sell, so far, over 3 million copies. Now, I did get these...
So, you heard a couple numbers there, and also the hat. He just had me feeling festive. Basically, we hear that number of 3 million, and just before we get into all of that, let's put a little asterisk next to that 3 million mark, because there will be a further clarification on that number, and spoiler alert, it's actually lower than 3 million. But even if we accepted the number of 3 million units sold in about, 6 weeks since the game has released, that is an abject failure, okay? There is no way that is a profitable game, given the sort of budget a game like that has. Other games with similar budgets to Dragon Age the Veilguard, you would have to expect somewhere...
Diatrius, thank you for the follow. And yes, maybe I might get myself a little Santa hat. I might.
Between 4 to 7, maybe even 8 million units sold just to break even. That is based on information we have seen from other AAA titles. And 3 million is just not going to cut it. And as you can see, the steam surrounding this game is completely run out. There is no interest. The player numbers have dwindled extremely low. The interest in this game has pretty much died. So they are pretty much stuck where they are at. But what's crazier than the 3 million number is the 10 million number. That is absolutely insane. That's not an ambitious goal. That is a delusional goal of trying to or expecting to sell 10 million units in just the first 3 months. They will never achieve that or come even close based on what we are hearing. But yeah, there's also a conversation, a further one to have, about why they need to sell so many units in just...
Yeah. They're, 1 month in, and they've just barely scraped by 3 million units? Yet 10 million units is a wet dream for them right now. It ain't happening. And Diatrius, welcome. I'm hoping you enjoy the live version as much, where you can get to see me rage knife on your screen. Okay, Dippus, have a good night.
3 months. People talk about a bubble bursting in the industry, and that's kind of where we're at with conversations like this. They kind of relate, and it's proving there's something very odd going on here as to why so much resources and time are being invested
Not even for a decade, Andrea.
You have to have these unbelievable expectations just to hope to break even. But let's continue on with a little more clarification on that number.
A specific number that they are sharing around internally, but I'm not going to say that here because I don't want anything to come back to this person. So I'm just going to say it's well over 3 million units, and honestly, that is shocking to me because the last figure I heard last time I talked about this was 1 million, and
so yes, his hunch here when he released this video about 24 hours ago was correct. This was a number we heard a couple weeks ago about Veilguard hitting 1 million sales, and that was according to an insider sharing info from a memo going around at the company, basically celebrating breaking 1 million sales. We also saw a similar report that claimed the sales of Veilguard were slightly below that of Star Wars Outlaws, which sold 1 million copies in its first month. And here we are with Veilguard, now out for about 6 weeks. And honestly, there is a clarification that's going to make a lot of sense. So this morning, Smash JT would make an update on that number. Apparently, another trusted insider at Bioware watched his video and said, yes, the information you're sharing is correct. However, there's one very important clarification, and it has to do with that 3 million units sold number. Apparently, that number is not currently sold units. Instead, that is their projection for lifetime sales. Yes, that 3 million is how much they predict they will sell lifetime.
So even their most optimistic lifetime projections are absolute dog shit for a supposed AAA title. They're fucked. Honestly, I'm surprised with numbers that abysmal. I'm surprised Bioware is not shutting down. Yes, Bioware is a major studio. But that is a massive fucking loss. That they're expecting a total lifetime sale of 3 million units when you need 6 to break even. The math ain't fucking mathing, Bioware. And again, they've already abandoned the game to move on to Mass Effect, which at this point, does anyone have any hope for Mass Effect? In chat, does anyone have any hope for Mass Effect in chat right now? No, I don't think anybody does. I can't think of anyone right now that has any kind of hope that the next Mass Effect game is going to be any good. Everybody has completely lost all faith in Bioware.
Cheer 100 hope for that one is dead.
Bioware is now a tainted studio for gamers. I mean, let's be honest. Every major studio is tainted at this point. Bioware, Ubisoft, Rocksteady, they're all fucking tainted. Nobody is going to touch anything of theirs for a very long time.
In reality, the number of units they've actually sold is around 1.5 million. That's half of what was projected. And again, that 3 million, even if it was currently sold units, was already a massive disappointment. They're at 1.5 million units sold. In fact, under 1.5 million.
Yeah, I was going to say, that says
sold.
under 1.5.
And that is a nightmarish result for Bioware. They have just become the they-them Sisyphus who's going to be pushing this Veilguard boulder up a mountain for the end of time. They're never going to get to that 10 million. They're not going to do it in 3 months. They're not going to do it in 3 years. They're not going to do it probably in 30 years unless something absolutely insane happens. So this has been a gigantic...
Really, Ochidoji? Your friend here says in theory that China imported DEI initiatives in order to destroy the US gaming industry so their gaming companies could swoop in and dominate the market. It's an interesting theory. Given the circumstances we're seeing, especially with Ubisoft, I can see why that theory might gain traction. Absolutely. Because it fits with everything that we're seeing with modern gaming industry these days. Yeah. So, whether or not it's true, I don't know. But the fact that it makes sense based on what's happening is scary enough in and of itself that you can say something like that and that theory could be postulated and your immediate thought is not, oh, that's bullshit, that would never happen. No, the immediate thought is that actually kind of tracks. And that's a scary place to be in modern society.
Failure for Veilguard, and you would hope that not just for Bioware, but across the industry, there's lessons to be learned. I say this all the time, and it's not really panning out, but I'm always like, there has to be a lesson learned here, right? You see what happens with games like this and how hard they fail, and these companies that are supposed to be making money would maybe say, what's going on here? Let's not repeat the mistakes they did. And maybe there's some introspection over at Bioware, but it appears there are some conversations going on and perhaps a blooming...
The only introspection I could see is them thinking, we didn't do it enough, that's why we failed. That's the only thing because they're fucking clueless right now. They have their heads so far up their own ass, they're trying to read each other's brains via taste. And they're thinking, maybe we just didn't go far enough. That's the only thing that I can think of what they're the only introspection I can see them doing. Okay, Kinito.
Shift going on, and not just BioWare, but also across the gaming industry. And this is what Smash JT's reporting further from that insider.
The message sent to me also shed light on the overall concerning atmosphere coming from within the studio. In a private group chat, not using the company's equipment being involved, I'm redacting any kind of specifics, but trust me when I tell you, more than 10 employees are together on this, and they follow my content specifically, among a few other prominent YouTubers.
Based, by the way, based employees right there. But a couple things to note there. I mean, number one, the fact that they don't feel comfortable discussing any of these things in a work setting. They have to go off on their own personal devices, I would imagine, to have these conversations is already telling towards the actual culture going on at BioWare. But
I'm going to disagree with that. I'm thinking going off on their own is not a matter of culture. It's probably more of a question of legalities and contracts. Because my guess is they are discussing things that if they are caught by the higher-ups could be contract violations. And that's why they're going off on their own equipment and everything. Because they don't want to get sued, or they don't want to get prematurely fired, or both. So that is a more likely reason versus what was just said in the video. It is, these companies take contracts extremely seriously. So that's my suspicion anyway.
I think a lot of people, myself included, sometimes make the mistake of overgeneralizing some of these studios and basically saying they're a giant hive mind, right? Everyone at BioWare thinks the exact same. Everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid. They're huffing the DEI. They're doing all that stuff. They all think the same. But in reality, just like any other big company, there's detractors. There's people who's looking to their left and to their right, and they're saying, what is going on here? This is not what I want to be a part of. And they are getting some criticism from YouTubers. And as much as people in the industry, especially games journalists, want to downplay what kind of an effect a lot of YouTubers covering this stuff can have, it's clear that not only is it affecting the way gamers are approaching these various titles and how they're supporting them based on information being shared to them by YouTubers, it's also clear that people in the industry are noticing this too. And some people, instead of just kind of wafting their hand at these criticisms, some people are saying, there's something there. Maybe we should start listening to some of these people and some of these concerns, not just expressed through the opinion of these YouTubers, but what the YouTubers and their audience and the people who are listening to them and gamers at large are thinking and what they want and what they don't want. And you would...
Problem. Here's the problem I see with that, is because these companies have got this is the only explanation that I can think of. These game companies have to be getting funding from some source outside of the company, and that source is trying to dictate how to facilitate the games. Because if they were listening to gamers and they were listening to these YouTubers, they would have made a change already. I don't think it's only arrogance, Dark Wolf. I don't. Because if it was only arrogance, the hit to the pocketbook would have made them realize, okay, arrogance is draining us dry. If they are getting funding from an outside source that's saying, keep going, then the pocketbook isn't getting hurt. So that's the question. Are they making static? Is it getting staticky? Chat, how am I sounding? Am I sounding bad? Is the voice deteriorating on us? Okay. Okay. So yeah, okay, comes and goes. That's normal. Coming and going is normal. Yeah, so it's like they've got to be receiving outside funding that is dictating how these games go. Because if it was a simple matter of hurting them in the pocketbook, they would have been hurt enough already to sit up and pay attention. Backslash, thank you for the follow. There is something else at play here that has them continuing to do this over and over and over again when they should be taking a hit so bad, when they are taking hits so badly, they should be going, oh shit, we need to make a big change. Rocksteady is the perfect example on this because Rocksteady took a $200 million loss on Suicide Squad, and we have not heard about any change from them. So what's actually going on financially behind the scenes?
Hope that there would be a lesson there, but it's good to see some people are actually starting to listen at places like Bioware.
Use this private chat to discuss content critiquing Bioware's current state and how to use it together to improve the working conditions from within. And that's why they're reaching out to me, using YouTubers, social media, to be a voice for them because they can't speak out
Possibly
internally still. They feel like they're being used to be blackballed if they decide to say anything out of sorts that doesn't.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. I mean, on the one hand, right, they're afraid of punishment internally, and that is the whole crux.
Now, given the fact that they put that into Veilguard, they might enjoy that. Not SJAs. I don't think SJAs are doing it. I think someone else completely on the outside is doing it. This is not coming from the SJAs. The SJAs are the means. They're being utilized as the means to do so, but I don't think it's the SJAs themselves that are doing it. And Marrying, thank you for the tier 1 for 3 months in advance. Thank you so much. Oh, Bobcat, I appreciate that they take time to make. I fully appreciate that. But it's happening over and over again over the course of years. This is why I have my suspicions like this. Because it keeps happening over the course of multiple years. This is why I'm suspicious of it in this way. I fully appreciate that a game can take multiple years to make. But how many years has this been happening?
Of woke culture, right? They make it so you feel like you're going to get fired or punished or ostracized because you speak out about what their agenda is and what they're trying to push in the company. But also, these people are afraid of speaking out externally as well. You are not going to see these insiders going to places like IGN or the other big games journalism networks because their agenda doesn't fit what IGN and those people are trying to share. So they won't listen to these insiders. They will dismiss them, or if anything, try to attack them for what they're doing. So instead of going to these hacks in the journalism scene, they're going to YouTubers who clearly are having some sort of a reach with gamers in a more significant way than other traditional sources, and that's why they're going to people.
Well, the traditional media now is fully in the pocket of these game companies. That's why they're not going to, because these quote unquote mainstream media sources are desperate to maintain their access. So they will basically suck at the teat, or the cock, if you will, of these game companies to maintain that access. Because for reasons that currently escape my ken, they think people actually consider them a legitimate source of game news and actually frequent their platforms for said news. So that's why the idea of going to what is considered a mainstream game journalist company doesn't even cross their minds. Because they know they're either going to get exposed to their parent companies, or these journalists are going to write them off as being basically istaphobes or something of that nature. Because the journos are all on board with the messaging that the game companies are trying to push. So yeah, they're going to the YouTubers who have made it pretty fucking clear that they don't give a shit about access. They just give a shit about the facts of the case. And yes, before anybody brings up, I do know that some of them have their own bent on a situation as well. I am not blind to this fact either. It's why I don't watch some of these, YouTube journalists, because of their pretty definitive bent on a given subject matter. But you have plenty of YouTube journalists that maintain a reasonable, even keel on the things that they are reporting on. And that's the go-to now to try and get a story out, especially ones that have a large audience.
If these so-called detractors hated DAI, they wouldn't work there, so it seems they are detractors because they can't handle the consequences of their actions. Cheer 100.
Rathan, I'm going to disagree with that. It's not as simple as, oh, I don't want to work here because I'm a detractor and I hate DEI. Right now, it is unbelievably difficult to get a job. If you don't already have a job and don't get transferred, it is damn near impossible to get a job in the gaming or entertainment industry on the back end of it. Is in like you are not the talent. Like to basically to be a game dev or to work behind the scenes in entertainment, it is damn near impossible to get a job. So it's not a matter of, oh, if they didn't like DEI, they wouldn't work there. They're working there because they need a fucking job. And the job, I would hope, I could be wrong, at least pays okay. So it's, they are not in a position where they can stand upon their morals from an occupation standpoint, because to do so means they don't have money. Or they're now having to basically work at McDonald's because no other game dev is hiring right now because all of them are fucking closing down or firing people because they can't make money. So it's not as cut and dry as if they need to just stand on principle and leave. It's not that simple, and I do appreciate that fact. And Grumpy Rat, thank you for the follow also.
Like Smash JT because they see the genuine nature of his care for the industry and things like that, and they feel comfortable sharing this information and knowing they'll have not just him but anyone reporting it will have a more authoritative mouthpiece on.
Well, I mean, Revan, to that point, what makes you think that they're gonna hire him with their resume as it is now? If they quit, the company they're working for is still on their resume. If they quit, that's still there. That changes nothing. It doesn't change anything. They still have to, but they still have to work
on the situation and spread the message even further. And talking about this kind of building narrative here that these 10 people at Bioware in a group chat, and it probably, I would assume, might be growing. This is a good sign. It's not a sign that everything is fixed. Wokeism is defeated. Of course not. That's far from over in any sort of a way. But there is something interesting going on in the past couple of months. I think it's definitely noticeable that on social media and really across the internet as a whole, there is a growing vibe shift away from woke stuff. And it's not just your typical critics who are saying like this is garbage, yada yada yada. The normal person, the person who normally hasn't spoken up the last couple of years, is feeling more emboldened to do so now. And they're not afraid of being canceled or threatened or having their lives ruined for criticizing DEI and woke slop that's been infecting many different avenues of life for years. So I think it's not a coincidence that there is...
Because the people opposing DEI are now vastly outnumbering those that are in favor of it, and they don't have anything to fear for them. Because the whole canceling thing that DEI use as their primary weapon has become ineffective. Canceling means nothing anymore. So they have far less to fear, if anything, from the DEI bridge group saying you are a blankety blankety blank. Because chat, what if I always said, where when you pose a legitimate argument about something or legitimate criticism of something, and instantly the response is istafolbury, what's the one thing to do in response to that? What if I always said, I win and walk away? Because you have one.
There's a lot more insiders leaking info to YouTubers and alike, and they are tired of this stuff, and it's growing within these companies, this disdain for DEI and woke stuff. I just think the gaming industry is probably a little bit behind on this vibe shift. And, it's really hard when there's so much woke stuff entrenched in these studios. It's going to take a really big effort to do something about it. But you would think, with everything going the way it is, especially with places like Bioware, where they are having a very hard time revenue-wise, you would think they'd start maybe listening to other opinions. In his video, he talked about how the leadership at Bioware is like, what's going on? What happened with Veilguard? We don't understand. When the answer is right in front of them, and they won't listen to anyone that'll provide those answers. But that is the current situation. I would imagine he's going to do an updated video. I'll put a link to this video in the description. You can check out any of his other content if you so wish. But let's continue on with a couple other stories we'll cover pretty quickly.
Cool.
Beginning with some more news involving Marvel Rivals, which has been doing amazingly in only the short time it has been released. As you can see, reported by IGN here, they have an impressive milestone of 10 million players in just 3 days, which of course it's a free-to-play game, but that's pretty irrelevant given the level of attention. It's a live service game. More players.
Well, Revan, apparently there was enough difference, and Marvel, and I'm not even sure who the developer on this is. Apparently they brought something to the game to draw people in. So I don't know. I mean, I don't really have an interest in playing it. It's not really my jam, but plenty of people do. We've rated off streams that have been playing it, and they seem to be having fun with it. Well, I mean, Cortana, this is a live service game because it has to be, because it's an arena shooter. So it kind of has to be a live service. And as I said, a game being live service in and of itself is not a bad thing. If the live service is is sort of a back end portion, the portion of it, whereas the front end, the focus is on gameplay and quality of story when there is one. If the live service is kind of in the background, that's fine.
Potential revenue sources.
Well, that's the question, Revan.
Will it talked about the other day, not everyone is happy about the success of this game. We covered this briefly in another video, but I have an update on this. So we had a former Blizzard president here who made this god-awful tweet, right, where they basically said that Marvel Rivals is an Overwatch clone, and he would get hit with a note and then eventually delete the tweet out of shame. But this claim that Marvel Rivals is just a clone of Overwatch is laughable to begin with, and just reeks of narcissism from this individual. But here, let's get an update on how things are going. It's been a couple more days.
Did they put Wolverine in Rivals? Did they actually put Logan into Rivals? That's what this seems to indicate. They did? Awesome. Okay. That and or Deadpool in Rivals would be the one thing that would make me want to try it. Logan and Wade being in Rivals is the one thing that would get me to try it. It would.
Since that tweet was discussed.
Well, that I knew Hawkeye,
see,
Punisher, and Widow.
Marvel
I knew
Rivals
that.
on Steam with a 77% approval rating, and the numbers have actually gotten better. That peak number we looked at for the first 24 hours has actually been broken and has now reached 480,000 all-time.
Well, I don't know if this is anything modern comics or it could be harkening back to. She used to have a mohawk back during like the 90s. I don't know if she has this now, but it could be, if she doesn't, it could be harkening back to that hairstyle she had back in the 90s.
Has actually been broken and has now reached 480,000 all-time peak concurrent players. And right now, over 300,000 players are actively using this game, which is, again, very impressive. Look at the way this chart is flowing, very consistent up and down here. So, yes, as you can see, going very well. How's Overwatch 2 doing? 27,000 in-game players with a 22%, yes, a 22% approval rating on Steam. But going down here, look at the numbers overall. You can see right from the beginning.
Look at the all-time peak. Their all-time peak was 75,000 players. Overwatch 2. So that means that someone was a little butthurt that Marvel Rivals is stomping Overwatch 2 into the ground.
They had their peak success in the first day and it immediately dropped off. And you can see the different seasons arriving, and interest is pretty much just stagnated ever since then. But there's something very interesting to look at here. If you look at the last week in particular, you'll notice right around here on the 9th, a player count of around 16,000 concurrent players. Now, that is interesting because that's actually the all-time lowest number for this game. And back on the other chart with Marvel Rivals, on the 8th, just one day before this, they set their all-time peak so far of 480,000 in-game players. So basically, what an incredible set of timing right there. Marvel Rivals crushing it just as Overwatch 2 hits its lowest point all around the time this former president is saying that Marvel Rivals is just an Overwatch clone that has no chance for success.
I eat hoping like fucking crazy.
Very enjoyable to see all of that unfold. But let's go to the next story. An update that pretty much is going to be ongoing for some time, but worth mentioning. So according to Reuters, Ubisoft shares have been suspended after talks of a potential buyout. Now, this is pretty much inevitable at this point. There's going to be some kind of a buyout at this point, and there's been a lot of talks between them and Tencent and other investors. And it appears that there is kind of a wrench in this, where the Guillermo family, however you pronounce it, is basically stalling things because they don't like how these proposed buyouts are looking because they won't have enough say in future board decisions.
Oh, shit. So what's not being said here, Tencent is freed up capital to buy out Ubisoft, and the Guillermo family is saying, well, hang on, we want to retain our majority control of the company. And Tencent's probably going, nah, we see what you did with it. We don't want you in control. And so now, I have to wonder, are we headed for a hostile takeover? That's what has me curious. We're going to see this come to a head in the new year. I can easily foresee that Tencent doing a hostile takeover of Ubisoft. Because come February, when Assassin's Creed Shadows launches, the shares are going to drop to probably, it wouldn't surprise me if it was record lows. And then Tencent is probably going to swoop in and do and do a buyout and do a hostile takeover of Ubisoft. And the Guillermo family, I don't know if they're going to be able to retain anything, but they could very likely lose everything by trying to do this.
Decisions, which is really funny when you think about it. Isn't that kind of the whole
Assassin's
point
Creed
of the
Shadows is
buyout?
gonna
You
kill
guys
it,
have been making all the decisions, and they've been doing really poorly. They've been bad choices. This is why you're being bought out. Like, why would you want to have more say? How do you think you're going to sell that?
No, I'm going to disagree with Rev here. It's not a question of wanting say. The Guillermo family is not wanting to keep their majority shares to have a say in anything. They want to keep their majority shares because if Tencent is able to turn things around, they want to get the higher return on their stock prices. It has nothing to do with maintaining control of the company. It's about making more money off of their stock. If and when Tencent's able to turn them around. That's it. Let's not, fuck with the bullshit here. It's not about control. It's about money. And the Guillemot family just wants as much money out of this company as it can get right now.
That in the buyout discussions. And again, another case here of a studio getting bought out by Tencent and having their influence shifting over to Eastern markets. And it's really, again, is there a lesson being learned here where a lot of people have
there should be, but I doubt there will be,
about some of these Chinese studios like Tencent, but they view the situation like this where they go, yeah, I have
thank you for the follow, Anonymousie.
My concerns about Tencent, but man, they're not as bad as Ubisoft, right? It's the lesser of two evils, and maybe there's a lesson there, and it's very evident how recently a lot of games from the Eastern market are crushing it, and a lot of Western studios are struggling mightily. Again, is there a lesson there? Who knows? But at this point, one more conversation about AAA games here, where IGN reports that skyrocketing budgets of AAA projects and diminishing returns on live service games have resulted in a loss of over 23,000 jobs in the industry in the last 2 years. And then we see that discussion about the AAA video game bubble bursting.
I don't think it's just live service games that's causing this either.
All the woes of the AAA industry, and basically that a lot of it is deserved because it's the result of bad decisions and not.
Yeah, it's not just live service games, okay? It's games in general. It's diminishing returns on games in general. Yeah, live service games are in there because, let's face it, a lot of games are live service. The majority of them are live service. There is no question there, but it's not only live service games that are seeing the effect of job loss. Most game industries right now are slashing jobs because they're just taking loss after loss after loss after loss.
Marketing your games and prioritizing gamers in that sort of a way. But really, the notion here is that these massive studios making these AAA titles, they feel like they're too big to fail. And now they are. And they're scrambling. And hopefully, again, this starts awakening a cultural shift. I don't even care if it's superficial. It's better than what it is at this point. If they want to say, wow, this woke stuff we've been pushing, it's not working out. Maybe we should stop doing that stuff and start focusing on what makes gamers actually happy and actually interested in our games. And maybe they wake up. But really that fear of or that thought of too big to fail is getting demolished. I mean, we can look at Bioware since that's today's example. A lot of people years ago thought they were one of the studios up at the pinnacle. And now look at them.
Okay, by years ago, we are talking 15 years ago. BioWare has been on a downward fall for years, since Anthem. Anthem is when you could mark BioWare's descent into horrificness. That is the starting point. It might have been before, there might have been notes of it before Anthem. Anthem is when it started going off a cliff. The failure of Anthem is when you actually saw it go off a fucking cliff. and they haven't stopped themselves. Yes, it probably was happening start prior to Anthem, but not to such a severe degree. Anthem caused it literally to just plummet and not stop. And that's where we are today. And that was many years ago. This is not like recent years. This is many years ago.
They're struggling. They're heavily criticized. A lot of gamers are mocking them. I mean, things can happen really quick if you keep drinking the Kool-Aid and going with all this nonsense that people hate. Now, we're going to end this video with one more post. This is just insane.
Okay.
So you've been watching the news. I'm sure at some point you came across the United Healthcare assassin. This guy, Luigi Mangione, has been taken into custody. The reaction to him on social media has been very bizarre. People expressing moral outrage, some people simping for the guy. But the thing that's very interesting is like people trying to get a sense of what he believes and going to his social media accounts. The dude is all over the place. But what's relevant to this is that he clearly had interest in gaming, and at one point I believe he was an intern.
Oh God, they're gonna blame gamers for this now.
For Civ. But whatever. This post from the New York Post is insane.
Guaranteed, the media is gonna blame gaming for this.
Regardless of any feelings you have about this situation, everyone in the world can agree this is garbage right here.
I know,
so they say in this headline, Luigi Mangione played assassin video game Among Us with friends. Extremely ironic. And of course, they get him a note saying this is a tame game played by children and doesn't confirm or teach or encourage any sort of violence. And it's just an outlandish.
But I mean, look who's made the article. Is anybody surprised that the New York Post put this out? Because this is the only way they can get eyeballs on their publication, is to do this shock bullshit.
Posts. I mean, again, these journalists are doing everything they can to stay relevant with outrageous takes, but now they're just getting mocked, and even in this case, getting community noted, so no one is collecting ad revenue on this post. Just a giant waste of time and another unhinged, weird take from a games journalist. Now, that's going to do it for this video. Lots of gaming-related news covered today, so as always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.
I kind of went ham on that one, didn't I, chat?